Hello, Drunkduckers! This is Ozone Ocean, and with me is Tansen Bane.
Hello.
Hello.
Today we're talking about apocalypse! Post-apocalypse, apocalypse, apocalypses, whatever. It's our subject. But yeah, it's our thing. Okay, guys, we're back after the beautiful theme. So, now we have to introduce the featured comic. Featured comic was a comic that I featured this week, and it's a little thing called Plague Rat. So, yeah, I'm going to tell you about Plague Rat now.
Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Plague Rat. A mysterious plague rips through a small village and wipes out every single soul apart from one lone lost survivor. The boy is taken in by a roving band of plague doctors and given a new start in life, learning medicine. This starts a whole new chapter for him. But why did the plague spread like it did? This is a great little medical manga set in the future after the world has been through a few medical catastrophes, and obviously takes a little bit of inspiration from the worldwide COVID-19 disaster. The story is a drama with some comedy, and the art is all black and white, digital, very clean, honed, and well done. So yes, this is a comic about plague, with that classic plague doctor outfit that we all know and love from iconography, the Black Raven kind of outfit with the hooked beak, bird mask with the sightless goggles and the little rounded hat with a flat crown, and that coat with the little cape shoulder parts. It looks fantastic, all in black. So yes, this comic makes liberal use of that iconography. Plague Rat, it's a comic by Rabbit Dance, and it's rated T for T.
And that was Plague Rat. I hope you enjoyed that, or, you should really check it out. Plague Rat's a good little comic. Okay, so the featured music this week. Well, this week Gummels has given us a theme to the comics.
I can.
And it's this is relaxed. It's the coolest of the cool. Kick back and let go to this breezy slow track with a killer bopping beat. You could listen to this forever, and it's so soothing and calming. So take it away, Gummels, with your theme to the comics.
Doesn't the Camex have like 2,000 pages or something?
It do.
Yes.
Am I thinking of the right one? Yeah.
And you could read it while you listen to this.
Forever and ever, ever and ever and ever.
was Gummels with the comics. I hope you enjoy that. And yeah, definitely check out Cam's comics. Cam is a great guy. He's been on the Duck since it was invented, since before the apocalypse. And Drunkduck has had many apocalypses, and he's survived them all.
True.
So, now, apocalypses. You know, where does the word apocalypse come from? I think it's maybe biblical.
It's a Greek word. Because the book of Revelations in Greek is called the Apocalypse.
Okay, there you go.
And it means to be revealed, like something is uncovered. And the whole idea of the book of Revelations is that this one guy, whether it is John the Evangelist or some other John, is being shown by an angel how the world is going to end, basically, and Judgment Day, but it's not just Judgment Day. It's a whole series of how the world is going to end and what is going to come after that. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It is revealed to him, therefore Revelations, therefore Apocalypse in Greek, apocalyptic stuff, because Greek sounds more bombastic to foreigners.
It's powerful language. Yeah, it works.
Apocalypse. Oh my god, it's scary. So so that's where the concept comes from, and that's been, people have taken it and run with it in so many different versions. So, and like we've had literal apocalypses, and we talked about this in the video cast. Like one of them was the fall of Rome, which created an apocalypse for all of northwestern Europe, Western and Northwestern Europe, whereas it set back culture and technology for hundreds of years when that empire collapsed, and people no longer had all that trading and that information, that culture, and because Rome was the glue that held everything together. So that was a real genuine apocalypse. And then we had the Black Plague and various plagues and things like that, which also caused the same thing. And I mean, we've had the similar kind of situations in South America, like the continent of South America, where we know they had city collapses and things, state collapses. We don't know really why, but we know it happened. Could have been disease, could have been famine or something like that. Unlikely to be famine because everything's so verdant there. But yeah, could have been disease, or just people being wiped out. Could have been genocide. Who knows? So
or even some kind of climate change, like something like drought sets in and they have to live. Period.
Oh, could have been. So that happened there. I'm not sure where else. Oh yeah, various islanders have had apocalypses because the islands are much smaller, island communities. So anything that happens on there, causes that. There's been massive volcanoes, things like Krakatoa. They've destroyed the whole island chains in one go. So yeah, that's an apocalypse. So
and we have the famous. You have Pompeii. Doesn't get more apocalyptic than that. It was just contained in 2 cities, more or less.
It does, yeah, but it didn't destroy a whole civilization, though.
No, but the eruption of the volcano at Thera did, which was the Minoan.
Tell us about that one. The Minoan?
Well, the Minoan civilization, basically, it didn't immediately destroy the Minoan civilization, but it was the beginning of the end, very, very definitely. And it had the island of Santorini is also called Thera. It is the ancient name, and it is basically a volcano, Like the island is a volcano, right? And you can even go like to the caldera and see inside and even walk, and it's warm there, and it has like, it is still an active volcano. It's just the last time it caused any serious disaster was in the 1500s.
Yeah.
So
it's a bit sleepy now.
yeah, kinda sleepy. But yeah, and so back then, I think like, don't quote me on the date, but it was somewhere around like, I want to say like 1300s BCE or something like that. And the volcano basically super erupted and completely destroyed Thera, covered everything in soot and volcanic soot, and it generated the tsunami. And if anyone knows the Aegean or how tsunamis work, it is not very easy to generate a tsunami there because there is not enough space for the wave to gain traction and become really big, and you know, all of that. And it has, well, Thera is on the bottom, like on the bottom part of the circle of the Cyclades. Let's put it that way. So it didn't have as many islands in its way when it created the tsunami, but still it was extremely big for the measures of the particular location. And the tsunami reached Crete, and it completely destroyed the palace of Knossos, which was the peak, the seat of the power of the Minoans.
Yeah.
And it annihilated it basically. And you can imagine if it could reach the palace and annihilate it, it didn't have any mercy for anything else, left and right. And this completely toppled the balance of powers that existed in the area. They did rebuild the palace, but not as it was before. And by then they never regained their grasp in the Aegean or generally in the area. And then the Mycenaeans took over basically. So
yeah,
that was this one event brought down the Minoan civilization. So
that, what do they call it on the internet when something comes up? Say that one weird trick that no one's don't want anyone to know about.
Minoans hate this one thing.
Oh dear. Oh, tragic. Yeah, tidal waves, they're horrible things. Very deadly. I always like to say, yeah, that the tidal wave is a better name than tsunami because people don't realize that the name tidal wave doesn't have anything to do with what people thought the cause was. It describes how it works. So the misunderstanding of tidal waves is that, oh my god, it's a massive wave, it's going to crash down on us and crush us. But the way a tidal wave works is it basically brings a flood like a tide. So the sea comes in with enormous power and it keeps coming and there's no way to stop it because this is the sea and it just like floods and destroys everything. So it's the power behind it that does it, and that like unstoppable flood. But so yeah, you can really imagine how that would just rip through the palace and all the farmland and everything and just like swamp it completely. So no stopping it, and picked up stuff and then crushed everything else. Yeah, it's bad. I mean, speaking of tidal waves, that there was a massive one back in, I think it was in the early 2000s or late 90s. I think it was in the 2000s, and it destroyed so many island communities and island countries. It just wiped out, like, I think it killed like 250,000 people or something. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but it killed thousands and thousands of people. So, yeah, that if it wasn't for our modern society with our, aeroplanes and communication methods, those people would have had an apocalypse that would have wiped out several island countries. So there we are, tidal waves still causing the same amount of destruction today.
Yeah, tidal waves are nature's way to remind us that we're basically nothing.
Yeah, that reminds me. I was the other day. It was a comedic video by some New Zealanders about Australia saying, "Oh, there's this that thing's there's dangerous. That stick, that's actually a poisonous thing. It can kill you. That thing over there, that's a poisonous thing. Everything kills you in Australia." And I commented on saying, "Yeah, but like in New Zealand, the whole island can explode and kill you." Or just the earthquakes, everything like the land is out to kill you in New Zealand. Like maybe the animals in Australia, but like the whole world down there is to end you, and that's the thing. Like somewhere like that can explode and kill you, so you can have an apocalypse just from the land you're on, if it's
Yeah, I mean, we have had some very historical earthquakes, like up scale of like 7 to 9 Richter on the Richter scale, which is devastating. But imagine that happening, like like in the 19th century or earlier on.
Well, it happens pretty commonly in Greece and Turkey, doesn't it? Or used to.
Yeah, well, not to that scale and not that powerfully, but it is a real possibility. And if that happens, there's nothing you can do. There's literally nothing you can do. You cannot hide anywhere, and you just want to survive these few seconds that it lasts, and it completely changes your life. It's an incredible thing to experience, and not in a fun way. So imagine, everything coming down, which has happened in Greece a lot.
Yeah, you look at the old temples. I mean, the Acropolis wasn't destroyed. The Parthenon wasn't destroyed by an earthquake. I mean, it would have suffered earthquake.
That was a bomb.
but say you look at the Temple of Zeus down the road, which is much bigger than the Parthenon. That was like freaking massive. It makes the Parthenon look like baby stuff. And there's only like maybe 7 columns left standing, if that. There's almost nothing.
Yeah.
Because that's been destroyed by earthquakes and storms and everything.
Absolutely.
But that thing was huge.
Yeah. I think it was considered, maybe that's not it. I don't want to say something stupid and I'm too lazy to Google it right now, but it was part of the era where everybody was building big to stick it to the neighbor, basically. So
I think what's his name helped build it, Hadrian?
Probably, yeah.
Because he had a real hard on for Greece.
He really did, yeah. We do have Hadrian's arch, which is near the column.
Yeah, very true, very true. So, well, let's talk about apocalyptic things that we've seen that have been inspired by the apocalypse. And all right, so one of the earliest things, not that like in a apocalypse, like fascination really started to happen around like the first millennium, when that was getting closer and everyone thought, oh my God, Christ is going to come back to Earth. We're going to have the revelations. So you had like apocalypse cults and all kinds of things forming all throughout Europe. The Christian world was pretty crazy about that. So, I mean, and so Revelations is a great apocalypse piece of literature. Like it is the apocalypse literature. But
this trilogy, I guess.
But you had you had that fascination for it in the first millennium. I can't really point to many real world like cultural creations from them though. From then.
Yeah, me neither. Just want to say something like we, as Orthodox, like the Orthodox Church, have been more or less protected from that kind of craze. It's not that it never happens. Of course, we have sects, we have different widows that go around yelling that the world is ending and all that. But I mean, as a whole, as an aggregate, protected from it, because the one thing that growing up about the apocalypse is that it is supposed to happen when nobody expects it. So if someone says, like the day, if you say that it's going to happen in X, Y, Z date, that is the date that it is not going to happen, like guaranteed. So, yeah.
Right,
So
I come like a thief in the night, he said.
Exactly. Oh, sorry about the dog.
Have a lot to say.
I'm not a puppy. I'm not an actual thief. I think I set off the guard dog.
The dog alarm.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, yeah. So we have the all right. It's the first millennium stuff, but towards the second millennium, we had I know nuclear war was the biggest apocalyptic fear that was going to end everything. I think in the First World War, obviously you had fears of. I mean, they called it the First World War, basically. So they thought everything was going to end. Like they thought that was going to be the biggest war ever. And if there was any apocalyptic fear there, I mean, it would have happened during like the terrible like artillery kind of barrages that created the horror of the Somme and all that kind of stuff. And people thought, oh my God, this is how the world ends. And then you had the gas attacks, so chlorine gas and all this kind of stuff. And then again, you're thinking, oh my God, this is how the world ends. And people would have generally believed that in 1916, 1917, all that kind of stuff when that was happening. So that would have been the big fear. And thankfully it didn't. And then we had the Second World War, even bigger disaster with millions more killed. And I don't know, people thinking, oh, this is how the world ends, massive bombing raids with like, what was it, incendiary bombs. That was the main thing. Like they would like wipe out entire cities with incendiary bombs, people being burnt to death, and long range missiles and rockets and all that kind of stuff that were happening. So yeah, and then of course the nuclear weapons. Well, not nuclear, atomic. The strikes on Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Yeah.
Go on, Tom.
Generally people, like whenever there is a mass like death event, I think people think of the apocalypse. Like for example, you mentioned all these more modern instances, like in 1859, 50 something, there was the Battle of Solferino. Which was, sorry about that.
Apocalypse at your house.
Yeah. Which was like a battle between Napoleon and someone else, and I don't remember because I don't care. But what I do care was that it was one of the bloodiest battles up to then, that it had so many casualties that the ground turned red in a very wide area.
When did that happen? Sorry, what date?
1859.
Wouldn't have been Napoleon then. Would have been someone later.
I think maybe Napoleon III, because I remember a Napoleon. Could be like the next Napoleon.
Yeah.
So that battle completely staggered everybody, and that's when the Red Cross was created, and that's why I know about it. From the Red Cross, and the red color of the ground was called Solferino red, and painters would use that hue, and it's also the original hue of the Red Cross. It's the Solferino red because that's when it was first conceived. Ericos, Henri Dunant, was there, and he was so shocked by everything that he felt that you shouldn't differentiate between different injured people and the dead, and you should give them priority to help them. And that's how the Red Cross was first conceived. So, and that was an apocalyptic event, and that's why I mentioned it, because they felt that it was like it couldn't get any worse. Like that was the worst of the worst at the time. Of course, it only took like less than 100 years to prove them wrong.
Yeah, well, of course, that reminds me, talking about that, you've got the Crimean War, which probably that might have been a part of, all that kind of stuff. So you had, but that means that was like the Ottoman Empire, which was starting to fail, and I don't know, like France and Britain joining together to try and stop Russia from taking over the Ottoman Empire, which they shouldn't have done. But that also reminds me, so the big apocalypse for Greece was when the Ottomans just took over Constantinople.
Yeah, 1453. It's one of the dates everyone that is Greek remembers. And it was an apocalypse because the seven hill city, as we were calling it, collapsed and together and took Greece with it, basically, because then when the Ottomans took over, they did not, like, we were turned into different provinces of the Ottoman Empire, and the identity of Greece was completely buried under all of that. And yeah, you basically had a lot of oppression after that, but not just oppression, because there were it was a weird mix and match thing. Like you had some Greek areas that were very privileged and others that were very oppressed. And in the beginning, it felt good because people remembered the occupation by the Westerners in 1206. And that was so terrible that the Ottomans looked like kindergartens by comparison. And so that was the first century or so. But after that, the honeymoon period ended, and most of the privileges were rescinded, and you had the actual period of occupation setting in very well. And and then you had, I think, up to 6 or 7 attempts to revolution, and all of them failed very, very bloodily. And then the last one succeeded, and here we are.
But it wasn't just Greece, of course. It was all of the Balkans, all those countries were there.
And it wasn't just that. It really was an apocalypse because it was a complete end of an era that was very distinct from the Ottoman one. It was like in the common unconscious, it was like day and night, and you had even the very symbolic situation of having all the religious buildings and effigies being basically converted into Muslim ones, and that was the sign of the death knell of the previous era. So that was, it doesn't get any more dramatic than that.
Well, of course, all modern mosques today, well, pretty much all of them, are based on Orthodox temples, aren't they?
Yeah,
Basically, the
Basilica.
Hagia Sophia is the main one, which is still a mosque
Yeah.
today.
Well, it had stopped being a mosque during the era where Turkey was more secular,
Yeah.
but now the politics have become very obnoxious again, and it's a mosque again. So.
Yes, well, the crazy Erdogan is the Trump of the East. So there we are. But okay, so now we're into the modern era with our apocalypse stuff, and apocalypses are less likely now. I mean, they can still happen, but they're less likely because we are so connected, especially with things like the internet. Communication is key to maintain a civilization, but we have like aeroplanes, which create extremely fast travel, which means you can help people a lot faster. But apocalypse fiction is a massive thing. So I wanted to ask you guys, what's your favorite apocalypse fiction? Or just list any of them. I mean, we have like on Amazon Prime the whole Fallout. So that is based on a game series about the fall of civilization after nuclear war in the 1960s or 70s or something like this, and the world gets sort of stuck in a kind of mutated, bizarre 1950s, 1960s, because that's when the war happened and everything stopped. So that's a rather interesting version of an apocalypse. And Vance, you were talking about something dreams.
Well, it's this old movie that I haven't seen it since I was a kid. I saw it on VHS, and I wouldn't say it's my favorite because I don't even remember it. I'm gonna watch it after this conversation at some point. But yeah, there's this movie, Radioactive Dreams. It was one of those lower budget, I think, 80s movies following Mad Max, one of the kind of imitators, I guess. So it's these two kids are raised in a bunker by their father, their survivalist father, and all they have to educate them are like novels about 1940s private detectives. So they adopt and they have all the fashions there as well. So they adopt the identities of these like 40s PIs, and then they come out of the bunker into a post-apocalyptic world. The 1980 something version of that, I guess. I'm getting excited to watch this again to see how good or bad it is. But yeah, that was even as a kid, like just seeing the cover of that movie and reading the description, I was so excited because of the contrast of these sort of old school gumshoe guys who talk like 40s detectives in this, Mad Maxian kind of world. Yeah, and I don't even remember anything else about it, but I'm gonna check it out again. I kind of enjoy like you have your pre-apocalypse type stories where the apocalypse is either averted or it begins at the end of the movie or the end of the show or whatever. Well, there's stuff like that I like The Thing, like John Carpenter's The Thing. I guess Cabin in the Woods is kind of like that. Not my favorite, but I enjoyed that. Neat ending.
If we go like to like peri-apocalyptic movies, like just before the apocalypse or something like that, I would say that the one I would currently say is one of my favorites would be Don't Look Up, because it feels like very much how the world would end today. Yeah.
So people are ignoring disaster, even though it's about to happen.
Exactly.
So I think it's a analogy for climate change.
Yeah, it could be. I took it more like a whole commentary on propaganda and how people are so entrenched in different views that reality completely loses importance. So, even if something would be in the sky and you would be able to see it with your own eyes that it's coming, you would completely choose to ignore it if whoever you are following and trusting as your personal guru of information, if they told you that no, it's not. It's okay. Nothing is gonna happen.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah, they tell you not to worry. You think, oh, I won't worry, even though you can see with your own eyes that there's something very bad to worry about.
mm,
That's it. Yeah, it's very, very, very important for that to come out at this particular time, because that's what we have. I mean, we had that during the whole COVID scare. Not COVID scare, the whole COVID disaster. When that was coming through, we had these idiots saying, "Oh no, it's don't worry, it's all a fake." And whereas there were people dying of COVID. Had these people saying, "No, not to worry," and then when they finally realized there was a threat, they're saying, "Oh yeah, okay, worry, but take these fake horse meds for
Drink
worms. drink bleach. Use UV light on your inside of your veins. That's a good idea." Yeah. Oh
yeah.
my God.
I mean, and it hasn't stopped now. I think it has become worse actually. So yeah, if the world, even if apocalypse were to happen, half of the people would be in denial that it is happening. So yeah,
It'd be like a reverse rapture. All the idiots would get killed off, and the good people would be left behind. Well, let's not be so grim like that. That's not good. Okay. A film I'll bring up, which I had never seen the full version of this one because I don't really like these kind of films. On the Beach. If you've ever heard of
oh yeah, I have. I don't know. I have had approach avoidance to this film.
Because it's about, like, it's not going to have a good ending because the world is effed, basically. The apocalypse has happened, and these people realize that they're all that's left, and they're just and they're going to die soon because everything's been poisoned by the use of, I don't know, certain kinds of nuclear fission can result in stuff that will poison everything and kill all life, and that's what's happened, I think, in this particular story. But it's interesting because it's in Australia where these people are kind of it's Australia's one of the last kind of places where this stuff is going to come down to and destroy. Everything in the Northern Hemisphere has been absolutely destroyed, but everything below that is just on the waiting list, basically. So, but it's a big film, starring Gregory Peck, Fred Astaire, these very important actors, and that was 1959. Wow. So people were worried about nuclear apocalypse even then.
Right.
So that was a thing, way before Mad Max.
Yeah.
So I think the Mad Max is actually an interesting film. So that was a big hit in the early 80s or late 70s, something, I don't know. But in that particular story, the world hasn't ended. The world, there's still some like society there. It's just that where it's on the way out, basically. Things are starting to break down, like society is starting to break down, but it hasn't broken down completely. You still have police, you still have, petrol stations, you still have, like, parts of society functioning, but it's starting to break down, which is quite an interesting version of an apocalypse, rather than showing the end of it or the beginning of it or, the lead up to it. This is the apocalypse has happened, and society's just starting to fray. And of course, then we have Mad Max 2, where the apocalypse has already happened and society's destroyed, and it ends up with people half naked going around in hockey masks on dune buggies, and that's what the society's come to. That's a very weird version. And then all the other Mad Max films, which are even crazier. So,
right.
But they were really the prototype of the modern post-apocalyptic or apocalyptic film after that, weren't they? For a long time.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, we had, like, I don't know. It's unnameable how many post-apocalyptic things were around. It was a massive genre. DEFCON 4 was that was a Canadian-made one, Bates. There you go, with a lot of Canadian
I don't
actors.
think I know it.
Yeah. Fantastic poster. The poster for it is that this satellite opening up with these massive missiles and this in the sky, and on the ground there's like there's a guy in a spacesuit or something like that. His helmet open and he's just got a skull and he's half buried in the sand. It's like, oh my god, the apocalypse has happened. And this terrifying title, DEFCON 4, which means Defense Condition 4. And unbeknownst to the creators of this film, that's actually one of the lowest defense conditions where everything's fine. DEFCON 1 is when you have to worry. That's the bad one. But yeah, Canadian makers, so you've got to see that to sort of be a proper Canadian.
Right. I can't wait to become one.
You'll never be a Canadian, man.
Keep trying. You remind me that the 2000s version of Battlestar Galactica, which I really liked, starts with, it's a sci-fi show, but it starts with the apocalypse. So the Cylons, who are artificial life forms, come back and destroy all life on all the planets, all the interconnected spaceships. And it's just this one big aircraft carrier that's kind of old school and not connected.
The Battlestar.
The Battlestar, so it survives. And it's like the entire civilization is on this ship, and then a couple of other ships that travel with it. And that's all that's left of humanity. And that's how the series starts. And there's so much flawed humans and real grit to it that it really makes it powerful, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not all great, but a lot of it is great.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's how the original Battlestar Galactica happened as well.
Yeah.
The famous Lorne Green as Captain Adama. Yeah. I love that show.
Wasn't, and you have to correct me on that one, but wasn't even Star Trek basically is a post-apocalyptic
far after the apocalypse and then the rebuild. Humanity sunk very low, and then we rose from the ashes to have a more positive future true. A few centuries later.
Like they had a total collapse. So society didn't continue along as it is now, and then result in the Star Trek world. Yeah, you're right. So that very well put, Tance. Star Wars, they didn't.
not exactly the same as Star Wars, but it's kind of, what's that period? I read this, I was fascinated by this sort of general sci-fi history thing that applies to a lot of sci-fi, where you have these different stages of humanity beginning to encounter aliens or go to the stars and then build spacefaring civilizations and then build an empire, and the empire falls. And then you have this sort of degradation period. What do they call it? The interbellum, or it's got some weird name or something.
Oh, that's too advanced for me.
Yeah, for me too, really. But that's where Star Wars takes place in sort of your general sci-fi history, when the civilization is decaying. It's all kind of falling apart, and you have these different factions and a lot of chaos, and that's sort of the prime territory for space opera.
Oh, okay.
And then, another phase would be the more positive empire that's built later. That's where you get your Star Trek.
Well, that does fit. I mean, Star Wars is basically what happened if the Nazis won. That's the the premise.
Right. Well, you have the evil empire, but then you have a lot of sort of just fringe, a lot of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, rebel groups and stuff like that.
Yeah, rebels.
Organized crime.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a pretty interesting world, at least from the first three films. I mean, those are the only films that exist. Of course, there aren't any others. I think we're all agreed on that.
Yeah.
But okay, all right. So let's see, post-apocalyptic stuff. There are a few barbarian stories. I mean, like fantasy was really popular in the early 80s as well as post-apocalyptic stuff because Mad Max became really big and everyone was influenced by that. Conan the Barbarian became really big and everything was influenced by that. But there were some films and stories and games and stuff like that where they did a crossover where you have a barbarian world because there had been an apocalypse. So there are a few like that. I can't remember the names of them. There was this really popular cartoon that was like that, like Thundar the Barbarian.
Thundar the Barbarian. First thing that came to my mind when you mentioned it.
Oh, so I was right.
Yeah.
There is this that comic series I quote from time to time that is exactly that. It's Storm by... I'm Googling it because I never remember it. Graphic novels, let's see. All right.
Oh, okay. Storm.
Yeah.
Was that the name of the barbarian?
By Don Lawrence. No, Storm actually is, if I remember right, because the last time I read it, I was 9 years old. Storm is actually a space marine or like a astronaut or something like that, who, in the style of the Planet of the Apes, he lands back on Earth, but Earth has completely devolved into this weird badland situation. Like everything has been destroyed, the civilization has collapsed, and there are barbarian factions here and there. And he actually lands with his spaceship. And at first he thinks that he has traveled back in time, but in the end they realize that no, he hasn't. It's just that the world has ended, and there's now this menagerie of weird courtyard of mutants sort of situation. Yeah. And so you have this series of graphic novels where he is trying to find like the last oasis of civilization, and he is aided by a cast of different folks and goes through different trials and tribulations. And it is a gorgeous set of graphic novels, every panel a painting, basically.
Okay.
Very much in the style, like reminiscent at least, of the style of Fallopian Crusaders Task. That's
Nice.
yeah.
Fallopian Crusader. Oh my god, that name. That's high praise.
It is.
High praise. Okay, yeah, so damn it, what you were saying there would just like piqued my interest because there's a few things. Okay, so whatchamacallit, Heavy Metal, that famous magazine had a few comics like that, but the one that sort of became their poster child with the that Julie Strain influenced main character. I can't remember what her name was, but that was sort of like a post-apocalyptic world, I think. And that was in the Heavy Metal 2000, which was a terrible movie, piece of crap. But yeah, that was all, had that kind of a feeling. It was a post-apocalyptic barbarian kind of thing. Buck Rogers, famously, that's a bloody 1930s thing. I don't know whether it was originally like that, but the 1980s version of it the TV version, was very, very much like that idea. So he was an astronaut, went up into space, and came back down to Earth like many years later, and it was a post-apocalyptic world. It was a new world. He joined this space, modern space force as a space fighter and some kind of galactic policeman or whatever. But that was a world reborn after the apocalypse, and there were all kinds of weird groups like Birdman and bizarre groups of people there. Buck Rogers, yeah. Did I say Flash Gordon?
No.
Okay,
No.
good, yeah. Buck Rogers. I mean, they were both very much related, those two things, but yeah, Buck Rogers specifically this. Whereas Flash Gordon
I didn't realize that he was a modern day astronaut who went into. I
Yeah.
didn't know that was.
Oh, Gil Gerard, I freaking loved that when I was a little kid. Loved Buck Rogers. Such good. Everyone should watch that now. Just turn off the Quackcast and watch Buck Rogers.
Yeah, wasn't it called Buck Rogers in the 25th century or something like that?
There you go.
Yeah. I know I've seen it, but I didn't really know what it was.
It probably doesn't hold up today though. But yeah, it was damn good. Yeah, so much good post-apocalyptic stuff. Like I mentioned, Fallout. So that's based on a series of games, and they've been going on forever. So the whole idea is there's these people who created vaults, which are their underground bunker cities, and they sort of like lived in there during the apocalypse because they knew it was going to happen, and then they emerge and try and sort of, fix up society again, or their vault gets wiped out, and there's all these mutants and all these other weird factions and stuff like that sort of competing for resources. And the TV versions kind of, take that and do their own vision. I can't stand it because it's way too violent for me, so it's not my cup of tea. I just don't like that level of violence. Like Mad Max sure has quite a bit of violence, but not that much. That's beyond. So I think violence was always a part of apocalyptic fiction.
Because usually what fiction like that explores is how society breaks down, and that will always involve violence, looting, having to defend yourself, having to attack others, that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, it's quite awful, really. Just trying to remember. Okay, one of my favorite ones is Damnation Alley. I think that's what it's called. Damnation Alley. Have you guys seen it? So this is a weird film where I think it's based on a famous novel by Zelensky or someone like that. But it stars the guy who played Hannibal in the A-Team, and the guy who played Stringfellow Hawk in Airwolf. So two of our biggest 1980s fun TV shows were both starring in it. It has this vehicle with tri-wheels called the Landmaster. That's it. So these two guys, they're in a military base somewhere. The apocalypse happens because that's what was going to happen in the 80s. Nuclear weapons, they destroy America. And years later, these guys are on a military base when it happens. Years later, these guys, quit the military or whatever, but they come back to the base and they try and they have to get to some kind of fabled oasis where, I don't know, people are growing plants again and life is restarting, and they have this massive trek in their massive Landmaster vehicle across the United States, and they encounter all kinds of weird things like man-eating cockroaches that come up and strip a person bare of flesh and all this kind of stuff. But it's that the interesting thing there is the oasis. So the apocalypse has happened, and you have these adventurers going across to try and find somewhere where life is restarting, and that's a common theme in a lot of
Yeah, I was going to
post-apocalyptic
say that's a
stuff.
popular, with different variations. That's a popular.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah. You often have this road trip shot, more or less, that is to the promised land. That is this place where civilization exists, or is reviving, or some such thing.
there's hope. So that happened in Thunder the
Hope for the
Barbarian.
future.
Yeah. Mad Max films.
This great movie called Children of Men. It's really that kind of plot line. No children have been born in whatever couple of decades. Or a pregnant woman.
I think the only one because everyone else is barren or something like that.
The famous Mad Max on the Sea. The Kevin Costner film.
Waterworld. Yeah. Oh my God, that used to be like a guilty pleasure movie for me for the longest.
Me too, man. I liked it.
Yeah. I really liked it. The whole thing.
It's sort of fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really
I mean, how can you not like it with a guy playing the bad guy like what's his name? Danny Glover? Oh no, what's his name?
Dennis Hopper.
Yes. I don't know why.
He's so amazing in that.
Yeah, he any place he plays the same type of bad guy, but he's so entertaining. So
he's amazing.
The movie Logan had that kind of same plot.
Oh, Logan. That's the claw hand guy, isn't it? Wolverine.
Claw hand guy. That's exactly who.
The claw hand guy.
As we do our comic book. But yeah, it had maybe not technically an apocalypse, but it had all the ingredients. Apocalypse. It really, for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that it would be unlikely that it would be named the apocalypse while it was happening. Like whoever survived it and wrote the chronicle, that's the person that would name it that.
That's true.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. All right. Well, one of the most famous apocalyptic stories back in the day was A Canticle for Leibowitz, which is it's about society absolutely collapsing, being destroyed by world war, nuclear war, and then slowly coming back, and the churches, like monasteries, actually helping that. And they're not necessarily like because they're religious, it's just because that's where people are shut in and can focus on science, or can focus on preserving, not necessarily science, but preserving culture within the monasteries. And that becomes how they are able to do it. And this kind of follows the way society was able to rebuild, and then was on the eve of being destroyed again in the exact same way. It's fascinating story. I super recommend Canticle for Leibowitz. It's amazing. But yeah, it because it gives you that blueprint of, or at least it sort of tells you about, hang on, apocalypses can happen, but as long as we have some kind of store of culture, we can keep on going. All right. Well, and on that note, the Quackcast is over for another day.
Yay.
Thank you very much for listening to the Apocalypse Cast.
Thank you.
715. Bye-bye, people.
Bye-bye.